We'll get these up from midget status. Good morning, ladies and gents, and welcome to lovely far north Queensland. We've got nearly 750 registrations for the conference this year in Cairns, so that just shows the high level of interest in the BIC agenda across the nation, and this year extending across to Tasman. A very warm welcome to the New Zealand colleagues, and in particular welcome to Alistair McDermott, the BCANZ President, who with Barry Kidd, your Executive Director, and a few other New Zealand board members instigated this joint event at a meeting we held in Auckland a few years ago. And I'm sure you'll enjoy the conference sessions, the social events, which you seem to fit in pretty handsomely to last night, and North Queensland generally. So welcome to all our Kiwi friends. For those of you who can remember back, I started as BIC Chairman in 2011 in a very entertaining ceremony on the Carver mat in Fiji with the local village chief. I'm pleased to report that both my knees have recovered, and the numbness around my lips from the Carver has also come back after that time. But during that whole time, Steve Haynes from Iveco has been my loyal and trusted Vice Chairman. And as Michael said, both Steve and I were re-elected yesterday at the AGM for the 8th time. Now, whilst there's no constitutional limit on how long BIC councillors can hold office, the fact that even presidents of the United States of America have a maximum tenure of 8 years would indicate that it's probably time for change. And accordingly, if all things go to plan, I intend that this will be my last year as Chairman of BIC. Now, yesterday's AGM also elected the new BIC Council, who will represent operators and suppliers for the next 12 months. They make a really important contribution to our industry and take the time out of their own busy schedules to support industry through the BIC. Now, if I could ask them to stand as I announce the BIC Council, beginning with the operators. Representing the State Associations, New South Wales, Steve Scott, Peter Ferris and John King. Victoria, Sam Lucas, Rob Wright and Ash McHarry. Queensland, Tony Gear and myself. South Australia, Ben Romanowski. Western Australia, Dennis Sutton. Tasmania, Shane Dewsbury. Representing the bus operator group, we have Frank Oliveri and Laurent Offroy. Representing the chassis group, Steve Haynes from Iveco and the Vice Chairman, as I mentioned, Julian Gurney from Scania and Kevin Fielding from Hino. Representing the body group, Peter Dale, Marco Polo Volgren, Anthony Rodder from Bus Tech and Anthony Fisicaro from King Long. And representing the associated service providers, James Lowe from McConnell Seats, Jamie Dunlop from Thermo King and Jeff Stewart from Multi-Spares. So thank you, gentlemen, congratulations on your election, and I look forward to working with you very closely over the next 12 months. Thanks, yeah. Now, the conference I referred to in Fiji in 2011 was a watershed event and focused heavily on how industry representation needed to refocus to meet the changing landscape in technological advancement, structural changes in service procurement and delivery, as well as the changing makeup of Australia Operator Group. Now, as predicted, during our deliberations, a lot of change has occurred in our industry since 2011. How we operate services has changed. The overall number of bus operators has reduced, but the size of the operators' businesses themselves are now larger. We have more national and multinational companies, and the whole distribution phenomenon is challenging our business strategies and established service delivery models with new ideas about mobility. We predicted all of those eventualities in Fiji, so there were actually few developments that we didn't anticipate. But even though we were forewarned, were we forearmed? I think it's important to occasionally look back in order to look forward and see where we are headed from an industry perspective. One thing is certain, The research, policy development and advocacy work of the BIC has seen a federal government move from one of the few Western developed economies to not being directly involved in public transport to now having both major political parties and the Greens adopting portfolios and policies that have seen the injection of billions of dollars into public transport infrastructure. More money has been invested into public transport in the last 5 years than since Federation in 1901. And in my view, BIC has been a key player and influencer in Canberra and in all of the states and territories. This fundamental change in policy thinking is a significant change, and as Albo has said on a number of occasions, BIC was ahead of the game on the need for federal government involving in our cities and public transport. The former Federal Minister for Cities, Paul Fletcher, also publicly stated and has written to the BIC about the important contributions we have made on the national debate. So this BIC research, policy development and advocacy is also highly relevant to state, territory and local governments. Never before seen levels of investment in public transport infrastructure by the federal government in our cities and regions has seen state and territory governments investing in new services and increased number and frequency of services. It is not a coincidence that 4 of the 7 state and territory government transport agencies are members of the BIC, and a relationship with the rest is very, very strong indeed. The national nature of the Transport Law, the NHVR and the NTC, and industrial relations through APTIA, has seen the BIC lead industry and coordinate the industry management of the many issues that impact our businesses every day. A current example that sees industry facing a massive challenge to the way we do business in the industrial relations sphere was the recent decision in Skeen versus WorkPac in the federal court regarding employment of casuals that could have massive impacts on our whole business. And I know that Ian McDonald, Marker from APTIA, will bring you up to speed with all of the massive changes and the impact of those changes to the law about casual employment. Though APTA is coordinating the national industry response to that case. I've said it before and I'll repeat it again. As I travel each year with Michael to visit members and shadow ministers, directors general, senior agency officials and Lord Mayors in every state and territory, and that is that BIC is held in high esteem and has widely recognised reputation as a thought leader in the public transport and mobility space. Regardless of whether you're a bus operator, a manufacturer or supplier, 2017-18 has seen disruptive technology rubber hit the road, as Michael said before. Trials of on-demand, first and last mile, point-to-point services are taking place across Australia, and autonomous vehicles are being trialled, albeit in a limited way, but autonomy is a reality that will grow quickly over time. These developments will mean a change in how we do business. It's already changing, but because we're part of it, it's hard to see it. And the revolution in transport services to our mobility service world is actually occurring. This will mean a change to how we do things in cities and how we do things in regions, towns and villages. The one certainty is that technology will play a key role in how we connect individuals to a transport service, no matter if it is a large mass transit service movement or low volume market. Some argue that these on-demand services are not new. They are old hat that has been tried before, like telebus and so on. The difference this time is the technology that is available and the capacity for big data to be collected, analysed and used to connect an individual to a service or services and take a payment in a seamless way from a single device. Big data is allowing transport enablers to connect actual demand to a mobility service. Transport disruption at its core is about changing the traditional public transport paradigm that is based on latent demand and set up pick-up points and times to connecting services to actual demand, and if you believe the pundits, at a lower per kilometre passenger price. Now, there's no wonder that governments around the country are interested in that concept. Mass transit will be a cornerstone of future mobility. Feeder services integrated into trunk routes will be a reality. Whilst their various forms are yet to be decided and will obviously vary based on a range of factors, mass transit will undoubtedly be the spine of the future mobility in our highly populated areas. Shared mobility has to be the mantra of all governments in the future. Roads and single-car users have had their day if they were serious about keeping our cities and growing regional centres productive and livable. Car ownership and reduced trips by car will be the policy focus of governments in the future, supported by the provision of shared mobility options that will make the car in the future a non-essential commodity. Whilst this might sound familiar to you, and it's something you've read in not something you've read in a George Orwell novel, it's actually, it reflects the BIC policy that we've been advocating over the last decade. Our industry representation is keeping it real with governments, and I hope this year's conference program and sessions keep it real for your business. Sure, business models and contractual arrangements, commercial and subsidised services may change, but at the core will be the transport provider who delivers the product. On either end of this transaction is an individual and a vehicle connected by an enabler. BIC advocacy is about ensuring that bus operators and suppliers have the entrepreneurial opportunity to be the service provider, to be the enabler, or to be both, for all the same reasons we've advocated over the past 10 years. Public passenger services have to deliver more than just a mobility outcome. They have to deliver other government policy objectives as well, such as economic growth, congestion management, improved environmental outcomes, social inclusion, energy security, improved road safety and health outcomes, for example. The same applies for future mobility. Our industry will be a key player in the mix in our cities and the country. That is why industry representation is actually more important than ever over the next decade to ensure our businesses take a lead in future mobility. So to conclude, I'll return briefly to Fiji. 2011 in Fiji at the BIC conference was also a watershed year for those who remember, because it started a discussion about future industry representation and what the rationalisation of operators in our major cities would mean for state associations and the membership of the BIC. The Bus Australia network, made up of the BIC and state associations, has been a great initiative to send a united industry message to all levels of government, but disappointingly, not have all been as forthcoming with support for this important initiative in a time of changing industry when in fact, it's most needed. Now is the time for greater unity, cooperation and the most effective use of limited industry representation resources. Every operator has a role to keep BIC and state associations focused on the end game and work together to achieve this. My final year as chairman of the BIC is going to have a strong focus on this aspect of industry representation, and I look forward to your support through your association and your BIC membership. This year's conference program is a great mix of business and educational sessions and social activities. It's great to have our Kiwi friends joining us in Cairns, and we all look forward to sharing our common and our different experiences over the next few days.